I want you to know, first of all, that no one person built this movement. We all built it together. Anyone that tries to suggest that they did it by themselves has another agenda, and it's not about the people. I also today want you to know that I'm not the last speaker. We need you to stay. But I have an assignment today as we make this movement go forward. Before I say anything, you see this man standing right here? His name is Dante Sharp. You already heard him speak. He spent 26 years in prison for a crime and a murder he did not commit. They have let him out, but that's not enough. We need a pardon for Dante Sharp. My brothers and sisters, I would have marched this morning. I'm nursing a leave because we are traveling across the country on the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival, and I ain't as young as I used to be. But I hope all of you will join us on June 20th, 2020 in Washington, D.C. But I'm so thankful for my leader here, the president of the NAACP, N.T. Anthony Spearman, and the entire coalition that is staying together. My good friend, Renita Weems, shared something with me not too long ago, and y'all know how I am. I need a little diversity up here. I don't feel enough Latino and white and Native American and gay and straight. Y'all know I can't speak till I got some diversity around me. Come on. Come on now. Come on. Y'all know how we do it. Y'all know how we do it. I need some color. I want all of God's family, because we don't do this by ourselves. All right. Amen. This ain't affirmative action. This is an affirmative movement. I want you to know that every generation has its moment to fight for what's right. That's what Renita Weems said, and said there comes a time you got to stop crying that you got to fight. Every generation has its Red Sea and its Pharaoh. Every generation has its valley of dry bones. Every generation has its oppression and its Calvary. Every generation has its trail of tears and genocide that it has to fight. Every generation has its slavery that it has to fight. Every generation has its Seneca Falls, its Edmund Pettus Bridge, its Bloody Sunday, its Great Depression, its Jim Crow. Every generation has its sexual discrimination and disregard for humanity that it has to fight. Every generation has its Operation Wetback. Trump wasn't the first one to cage Latino brothers and sisters. Eisenhower did it in the 1950s. Every generation. In other words, every generation has something to face. And so, my brothers, in this season, it's just our time. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's just our time. Stop mourning and let's go to work. And yes, here in North Carolina, we're first in the nation. We've had to face regression. We've had to face in recent days. It's not new to America. It's just intensified now because of 24-hour news cycle. We've had to face a narcissistic, lying, draft dodging, abusing of power, president in the Oval Office. But it's just our time to face it. We've had to face stacking federal court judges who treat corporations like people and people like things. We've had to face, and we have to face, those that want to take away a woman's right over her body, and those who want to block voting rights. It's our time. We've had to face Mitch McConnell not only stacking the courts, but for more than 2,000 days, blocking fixing the Voting Rights Act. Strom Thurmond blocked the Civil Rights Act of 1957 for one day, and we called him a racist. McConnell has blocked fixing the Voting Rights Act for over 2,000 days. I wonder what we would call him.
Hey, sir.
We have, and not only in North Carolina, But in this nation, we have some things to face, Brother Cunningham. 48% of people in North Carolina are poor and low wealth. 4.7 million people in this state. 49% of women, 2.5 million. 62% people of color, 2.3 million. But in 39% of white people, 2.4 million, the largest group, are poor and low wealth in North Carolina. We've got to face it. 1 million people without health care in North Carolina. We have to face it. And a legislature that has refused to expand health care, which means every year in North Carolina, nearly 6,000 people die, not because God called them home, but because a legislature will not pass Medicaid expansion. We got to face it. It's just our time. Over 1 million people in North Carolina own food stamps. We spent $122 billion in a war we should have never gotten in with Afghanistan from North Carolina. That same money could have created 97,000 jobs. We have to face it. We've got these real issues in our time. And so we have to face it. Nothing we can do about it but face it. We're not the first ones that had to do it, so we might as well face it. Touch your neighbor and say, face it. But we don't face it crying, we don't face it mourning, we don't face it with our backs bent, we face it fighting for what is right. I've been reading a lot about people who face things far worse than us. You do know folk have been through some stuff far worse than Trump. 400 years of slavery jacket, the Holocaust. 250 years of Jim Crow. We have faced things far worse than the extremism we see today. I was reading the other day Dr. Spearman, Frederick Douglass. In 1857, after the Dred Scott decision, David had come down. The people told Frederick Douglass and white abolitionists like William Lord Garrison, y'all might as well go home. It's over now. The Dred Scott decision says the black man has no rights, the white man has to abide by. They can come and get us anywhere. And Frederick Douglass was asked to speak at a moment that people had seen a kind of failure to find guilty the system of slavery. And folk were kind of looking down and looking around and saying, what do we do now? And Frederick Douglass says, yes, this is a monstrous attempt to turn back justice. He said, but that's only one point of view. Frederick Douglass said, Andrew, there's another point of view. He said, we, the abolitionists and the colored people, should meet this decision unlooked for and as monstrous as it appears with a cheerful spirit. In other words, sometimes when a nation shows you who she really is, or when certain people show you who they really are, you ought to get glad about it because now you know what you got to fight. Right. Frederick Douglass said, listen, this very attempt to blot out forever the hopes of an enslaved people may be one necessary link in the chain of events preparatory to the downfall of the complete and overthrow of the whole system. In other words, sometimes folks think they've won, but what they've done is what my grandmama used to say: you give a horse enough rope to hang himself. Sometimes they have won. Their arrogance, they think they've won. But actually, they've gone too far. And Frederick Douglass said this. He said, listen, the whole history of the anti-slavery movement is studied with proof that every measure devised and executed with the view to allow and diminish the anti-slavery agitation has only served to increase, intensify, and embolden that agitation. Yeah. You hear what I'm saying? It was a bad time. But Frederick Douglass looked at it another way. The abolitionists looked at it another way, and they said the forces of regression must fear us. And so rather than just us going backwards, maybe we ought to actualize their fear and build a movement like they've never seen before. Yes. He said it only serves, Derek, to increase and intensify and embolden our agitation. And so I came by here today for just a moment to say, in the face of everything we see, we've got some challenges. state and national. But we've already shown we can win. They spent $6 million of our tax dollars. They had a whole, as my other grandmama called, passel of lawyers. We had Moral Monday, HK&J, some pro bono lawyers, and a few chicken sandwiches that we sold. And we won. We won. And now that we have won to preserve the right to vote, God knows in heaven we better vote. We better vote. Now let me tell you something, and I'm going to my seat. In 2016, 6 million people in North Carolina were registered to vote, but only 4 million voted. 2 million voters that were already registered. Touch your neighbor and say, already. Didn't even have to register. Touch another neighbor and say, already. Now look at him and say, I hope it wasn't you. I hope it wasn't you. They were already registered, right? Now watch this. 2,176,000 voters didn't vote. Trump won by 173,000 votes. There is a place at which what we see now is not Trump's fault, but it'll be our fault if we don't actualize our power. In 2014, there were 6 million voters registered, Dr. Spears. 2 million people voted for the U.S. Senate race. 3 million registered voters didn't vote. And Tom Tillis won by 40,000. 40,000. I said 40,000. That's only 400 votes per county. There comes a time you got to stop saying how big Goliath is and realize how strong you are. And in 2016, 64% of registered black voters voted, but 26% didn't vote. Trump won by 173,000 votes. 553,000 African Americans who were registered to vote didn't vote. We got some power that's not yet being used. And 1 million white folk didn't vote. There comes a time that we must stop mourning and start mobilizing and go to work. This is the 150th year of the signing of the 15th Amendment. It's time for us to mobilize and go to work. This is the 55th year of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. It's time for us to mobilize and go to work. Frederick Douglass said, in the face of oppression, you must embolden and intensify your agitation. And so that's what I came by to say. I came by to say that if the extremists try to take and suppress our right to vote, they must fear our power. And if they fear our power, then let's actualize that fear. Y'all don't hear what I say. You don't hear what I say. If they fear our power, then why don't we as white folk and black folk and brown folk and yellow folk and gay folk and straight folk and folk from the mountains and folk from the sand hills, why don't we actualize their fear? It's time to intensify and embolden our agitation at the ballot box. Every time we get bothered by another attack on health care, it's time to intensify and embolden our agitation at the ballot box. If we don't like the impeachment cover-up, then use the fact that they didn't acquit him to intensify and embolden our agitation at the ballot box. If you don't like the senators that voted not to impeach, then intensify and embolden our agitation at the ballot box. If we are against warmongering and caging women and children, then it's time for us to embolden our agitation and intensify it at the ballot box. If we want to see education fully funded, stop cussing at Trump and go somewhere and mobilize people and embolden, intensify our agitation. If we want to living wage at $15 in a union, then it's time to intensify and embolden our agitation. If we want our gay brothers and sisters to be treated right, it's time to intensify and embolden our agitation. I wish I had a witness here. I wish I had a witness here. If you're tired of a president that's committed to lying and racism and economic policies that cater to the wealthy and hurt the poor and takes health care and blocks living wages, then don't cuss at a tree in your backyard. Embolden and intensify your agitation and get everybody to the ballot box.